All right, well, now we're going to get this party started. Again, I'm Greg Stultz, New Readers Press Product Trainer. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to take your students on a journey to success with evidence-based reading instruction. That's today's presentation, so good afternoon. And to those of you who are joining us from Hawaii, I'll say good morning. I don't know that there are any people from Hawaii, but I just wanted to say that. For those in Dublin, good evening. Okay, enough of that. What we're going to do today in today's webinar is, first, we're going to define evidence-based reading instruction, and I'm going to be referring to it often as EBRI because it's quicker. And we'll talk about its 4 key components. We'll look at the EBRI lesson template used in our Journey to Success reading and writing series. Then we'll walk through each step of the template, getting an overview of the series, sampling instructional strategies, and noting the series' careful alignment to the college career readiness standards as we go. Now, when you see this green exclamation point on a slide, it means that I'm citing information found in this Department of Education report. What is evidence-based reading instruction, and how do you know it when you see it? It's in the public domain, and it's available on the DOE's website. It's actually a pretty good read, so I encourage you, if you have time, to give it a look-see. So before we jump in, what is evidence-based reading instruction? Well, I'm going to get all sciencey and dissect it with you. The Partnership for Reading defines reading as a complex system of deriving meaning from print that requires an understanding of how phonemes or speech sounds are connected to print, and the ability to decode unfamiliar words. That's alphabetics, folks. Sufficient background information and vocabulary to foster reading comprehension, the development of appropriate active strategies to construct meaning from print, the ability to read fluently, and the development and maintenance of a motivation to read. Evidence-based means research from scientific data or expert consensus that must be valid and reliable and come from a variety of sources. Okay, well, according to the National Reading Panel and Susan McShane's work, there are 4 principles of evidence-based reading instruction. These are also what the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, and the Student Achievement in Reading, STAR project, considered to be essential components of reading. So what are these 4 principles? Well, you just saw them a few slides ago. Alphabetics, using phonemic awareness, phonics, and decoding skills to identify words in print. Working on phonics, word analysis, word parts, and word families increases student success with reading, and it helps readers to identify and learn new words. Vocabulary. The reader needs to know what words mean to be able to get meaning from the text. And as the reader's vocabulary grows, she or he will be able to read a broader variety of materials and at higher levels. Reading comprehension skills and strategies help the reader understand things like how the information is organized. Oops, I jumped the gun there. Get that out of there. Reading comprehension skills and strategies also how to extract information, how to combine or synthesize ideas. And now you can come in fluency, reading quickly and accurately. If the reader's concentrating on decoding words and putting them together to make sentences, well then what is she or he likely not focusing on? If you said aloud or to yourself, content or comprehension, you'd be right. Fluency is also reading with proper emphasis and inflection, or what we call prosody, which adds meaning to what's being read. And as reading becomes easier, it also becomes more enjoyable, which increases motivation, and that's super important. And let's remember that a student's motivation to read is fueled not only by visible progress, but also by connecting reading materials to personal interests, including learning and life goals. Now, as we look at EBRI through our Journey to Success series, I want to stress how the series is consistent with the College Career Readiness Standards. 3 key advances in reading instruction are embodied in the CCR Standards for adult education in the language arts, and we incorporated these into our series teaching methodology as well. The first is increasing text complexity. While there are a number of features that make a text complex, like paragraph length, text structure, dense information, just to name a few, 2 stand out as giving students the most difficulty: complex sentences and uncommon vocabulary. These 2 features are also what we refer to as academic language. If we expect to see significant gains, we need to challenge our students by increasing text complexity, but at the same time, keeping it accessible to their level of ability. Second is close reading and prioritizing evidence. We need to help our students become detectives as they read. So to answer the questions and writing prompts we give them, they need to revisit the text they just read to locate pertinent details, summarize the main ideas, make inferences and draw conclusions. And lastly, they're reading informational texts to acquire knowledge. The texts introduce them to new ideas and topics they need to know about. For example, workplace memos and handbooks, technical texts like science articles, historical or civics-based passages. Yes, they're reading things to learn new academic skills and reading strategies, but at the same time, they're gaining knowledge in topics relevant to them. Now let's see how this all comes together in Journey to Success. Here's the lesson model. First, we should note that according to research, the instruction should be systematic, sequenced, direct, and explicit. And you can see by the template that the first 2 prerequisites are satisfied. As we demonstrate a lesson plan built on this model, you'll see that instruction is also direct and explicit. Each new skill or strategy, or new word for that matter, is first explained, then modeled, followed by guided practice, and finally independent practice and application. And so we've got step 1, the warm-up, with objectives and discussion starters, some phonics work to get them going, and vocabulary introduction. Reading is next with before, during, and after, and then some fluency work. Word work, it includes working with word parts and a vocabulary review. And the wrap-up that incorporates writing and thinking and discussion time. Now, in keeping with the 3 key advances in reading instruction exemplified in the College Career Readiness Standards that we talked about earlier, the text complexity in regards to vocabulary, structure, and length, the close reading and evidence gathering required in each passage, and the relevant content acquired and used challenge the learners at their respective levels of ability. And you'll see that as we move forward with this. Now, finally, let's walk through the template using 3 different levels of Journey to Success. At Journey's introductory level, that's an NRS level 1, TABE level L, CASAS level A, students learn the basic alphabetics and phonics concepts they need to become good readers. Stage 1 is the warm-up, right? The objective is stated so students know where the lesson is going. And in this case, they'll learn about the letter P. So first, they'll prepare to learn about its sound by identifying words with P. An illustration provides opportunity for discussion, and it'll help them to brainstorm. So we're here, let's take 30 seconds to see how many P words we can find in the picture. As you say them to yourself, or if you like, post them in the chat, think about questions you might ask students to help them find these words. Because often, learners at this level will need a little nudging. So go ahead, we'll give you about 20, 30 seconds. How many P words can you come up with? And then just think it through, you know, what might you ask a student if they need some help? Yeah, great. Great, great, great. Okay, picture, plaid shirt, pot, plumber, plunger, pear, puddle. Super. So phonics work follows as the students identify, dictate, and copy words with that target letter or blend. So, as we've already mentioned, a few of these: plate, pot, pan, pear, picture, pipe, puddle, plaid, plumber, right? And then they use the words from the list to make sentences. At this level, likely dictating to the teacher, who writes the sentences for them to copy and practice reading aloud. So maybe they come up with, I see a plate, or there is a puddle. And as students move from single consonants to short vowels to blends, the length and difficulty of the exercises and readings increase. Next, learners work with key vocabulary in a picture dictionary format, and they start building a base of sight words. Moving on to step 2, reading. We see the active reading technique that I mentioned before, during, and after being employed to improve comprehension. The pre-reading strategies improve comprehension by setting the stage. In this lesson, the strategy is setting a purpose for reading. So let's see, it says, read the story to see what Padma does about her plumbing problem. Write the word that fits. Okay. In other lessons, students may be directed to preview or skim the text, use prior knowledge, or make predictions. Next, the learners are directed to interact with the passage as they read. At this level, they do so by filling in the blanks with the vocabulary words in the left margin. But in other lessons, they may be asked to synthesize information to answer questions or complete the story. After the reading, students will have a chance to discuss with a classmate an idea from the reading. For example, here, what would you do if you had a plumbing problem? And then they might actively discuss that in pairs, maybe in a group. And then it's time for fluency practice. For this lesson, the teacher's guide suggests using choral reading. So they would read the passage, you would read the passage, modeling proper pace and prosody, and have the students read along with you. At the introductory level of Journey to Success, students are learning the basic alphabetics and phonics concepts they need to become good readers. They're likely working with words they know, just not by sight. And for this reason, the third step, word work, isn't emphasized the way it will be at the higher levels. However, as an extension, you could use the key words and the sight words to work on word families. And vocabulary review will be addressed in our last step, the wrap-up. In fact, I'm going to show that to you right now. Step 4, the wrap-up. So here, partner or group discussions and the language experience approach are used to collaborate, reflect, and practice basic process writing using the vocabulary words that were introduced in the lesson and in the discussions. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the language experience approach, it's a whole language approach that promotes reading and writing through the use of personal experiences and oral language. So the student or students share a personal experience orally, and the teacher writes it down word for word. This helps the students develop print awareness as they see the direct connection between images and the words. And after the teacher writes the story, she or he reads it back to the student or students, inviting them to make corrections or changes if they like. And then students write the story down and they practice reading it together. And that's the language experience approach. In levels 1 and 2, we'll see the same lesson layout, but instruction and skills work are fleshed out over 8 pages as the length and complexity of passages and activities increase. Students will be making the transition to reading and writing at higher levels as they're introduced to new phonics and alphabetics concepts, new vocabulary and vocabulary building skills, and specific reading and writing skills and strategies using longer, more complex texts across a mix of real world and academic topics, building knowledge, right? Like life and work skills, science, social studies, and literature. Let's take a look at level 2. In step 1, our warm-up, the lesson opener prepares students by telling them the phonics, vocabulary, reading and writing skills that will be learned and practiced, and the topic of the main reading passage. The photo could serve as a catalyst for discussion. You might ask questions like, what kind of things do people vote for? When have you voted in the past? What was the vote about? Each lesson begins with a phonics warm-up. The students read a few sentences and then look for words with the target sound. So Marco napped on the couch one night. A sound woke him up. His hound was making a loud growl. Then Marco saw a brown mouse dash under the couch. How the dog howled. Marco frowned. He crouched down on the floor to look for the mouse. How would he get out? Right. And then on the next page, the next page includes specific instruction about the sound and how the words are spelled. And there are tips and example words that help the students to remember what they learn. And this is followed typically by 3 to 4 different activities, like, as you see here on the slide, matching exercises. Identifying words with the same vowel sound, working with word families, cloze exercises, and others. In the introductory book and book 1, students are developing basic decoding skills. They're counting syllables, they're building a foundation of sight words. In book 2, they begin to add new words to their arsenal, defining and using them first in simple closed sentence exercises before contextually encountering them in the main reading passage. These vocabulary words are what the College Career Readiness Standards refer to as Tier 2 words, higher level general academic words that are found in textbooks and on tests, and in more sophisticated texts across a variety of content and genres. They're less likely to be part of the student's current vocabulary, and they give students the expanded vocabulary they need to read higher level, more sophisticated texts and express themselves better in writing and speaking as well. And so we're increasing text complexity, right? Next, a vocabulary building skill that aligns to Anchor 4 in the CCR language strand is explained and modeled, and the students practice it. In this activity, it's analyzing word parts. According to Anchor 4, let's read it here. Determine or clarify the meaning of unknown and multiple meaning words and phrases by using context clues. There it is, analyzing meaningful word parts and consulting general and specialized reference materials as appropriate. Now, as always, direct instruction is practiced. So first, the skill is explained, right? A prefix is a word part that comes at the beginning of a word. The word untrue, for example, has the prefix UN. So we have the explanation, then it's modeled, followed by guided practice and independent practice with the skill. And it's on to reading. Sticking to our EBRI template for active reading, first we have the students preview the passage. So before you read the article, think about what you want to find out. Preview the article. What's the article about? What do you want to find out about the topic? What does the boxed text tell about? Keeping the reader engaged as she or he reads, the student is directed to take notes and underline or circle key information. These before and during reading techniques build healthy interactive reading habits. And notice how the sentence and paragraph length and the text structure changes as we move up in book level, increasing complexity. After each reading, there's a comprehension check that satisfies CCR Anchor 2 from the reading strand, determine central ideas or themes of a text and analyze their development, summarize the key supporting details and ideas. Here, the students are working with a partner, first by taking turns to retell the article in their own words, and next they answer questions to make sure they understood the reading. And then they talk with their partner about an idea from the reading. Next, students work with a specific reading skill that, once again, is aligned to Anchor Standard 2. And in this lesson, it's understanding sequence. So as the strategies for reading comprehension and the process for writing begin to be developed more at this level, graphic organizers are used to illustrate the new reading and writing skills. Here, the students use the organizer to fill in the steps for voting. First, next, then, and finally. Each reading passage in a lesson includes a review of the phonics skill and, going back to our 4 essential components of reading, fluency practice. This time with a paired reading activity where students return to a familiar text and they take turns reading sentences for speed and accuracy. Again, our vocabulary review is going to be addressed in our last step. This is supported by research showing that vocabulary practice should include writing and discussion activities, as well as meaning activities. When we read about it, we write about it, right? According to the National Council of Teachers of English, research has shown that when students receive writing instruction, their reading fluency and comprehension actually improve. The methodology in Journey to Success makes this connection between reading and writing even stronger by teaching a writing skill that's related to the reading skill in the lesson and applying that skill to the writing task. The writing tasks cover common types of writing adults may need to do both academically and in the workforce. Narrative writing, process writing, informational, procedural, work memos, reports, filling out forms, and the list goes on. True to our Department of Education research, instruction should be systematic, sequenced, direct, and explicit. The writing exercise begins with an explanation of the writing skill, as you see here. followed by modeling and guided practice using a graphic organizer on sequence, as we did for the reading skill activity earlier, connecting the writing to the reading. And here the students will write steps for registering themselves or a child for school. Look familiar? We got first, next, then, finally. And that really merges nicely with the reading skill that they worked on earlier. And in keeping with College Career Readiness Writing Strand Anchor 5, develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach. Students follow the process in each lesson, which will prepare them for the more advanced writing they'll do in the upper levels. Finally, a think and discuss activity is used to wrap up the lesson. Read this quote by Susan B. Anthony, who in the 1800s worked to end slavery and give women the right to vote. Someone struggled for your right to vote, use it. Right? Many Americans who are eligible to vote do not. In small groups, discuss. What do you think Susan B. Anthony meant? Why do you think some people choose not to vote? In some countries, voting is required by law. Do you think the US should have a law to make people vote? Right? Now that the students have a good grasp on the reading passage from the vocabulary, from reading comprehension and writing activities that they've done, they're prepared to participate in conversation about the topic, using academic language and new vocabulary to express their ideas and opinions, listen to and collaborate with their peers. And that satisfies the CCR Speaking and Listening Strand Anchor 1 that reads, prepare for and participate effectively in a range of conversations and collaborations with diverse partners, building on others' ideas and expressing their own clearly and persuasively. Books 3 through 8 continue the evidence-based reading instruction journey using the same template, but once again, increasing text complexity with longer, more dense passages, higher level vocabulary words, and more advanced reading strategies and writing tasks about life and work, science, social studies, and literature. Let's use book 5 to talk about Journey to Success levels 3 through 8. First, you'll notice in the reading objectives, there are now 2 passages in every lesson. This one, invasive species, one about animal invaders, and the second about insect invaders. In addition to preparing students by telling them the phonics, vocabulary, reading and writing skills that will be learned in practice, key vocabulary words and content vocabulary words are introduced and defined at these levels. Now, we've already talked about the key vocabulary words, right? There are tier 2, general academic words. In books 3 through 8, Journey introduces, oops, I went too far again. Fat fingers. In books 3 through 8, Journey introduces tier 3 words as well. These are specialized vocabulary words and they're domain specific, like, for example, science or finance or legal words. So books 3 through 8, now we have both tier 2 and tier 3 words. There we go. As students work their way up through Journey books 3 through 8, they need less instruction and practice with phonics and more exposure to and practice with the more sophisticated vocabulary. Direct instruction before reading improves comprehension. The words were explained and modeled in our warm-up objectives. Now students will use them prior to reading the passages so they can then read the words in context with improved comprehension. Asking and answering personal questions is a great way to get students to understand a word by using prior knowledge and relating it to personal experiences. So we have questions like, what are some things that could disrupt your sleep? What kinds of products do you buy that are imported from another country? What do you do when someone is driving aggressively and why? What people have had the biggest impact in your life, and so on and so on. You, your. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Take, for example, the word elated. It takes on real meaning when the learner can connect it to one or more experiences or events that she or he had. Elated, completing a marathon, losing 50 pounds, earning a high school diploma, becoming a US citizen, surviving cancer, winning the lottery, whatever that may be, but now they're connecting to it personally, and that makes all the difference. And as I mentioned earlier, research tells us that effective vocabulary practice should be more than just memorization and include both writing and discussion opportunities. Sticking to our template and the College Career Readiness Standards, a vocabulary tip follows. This one is on using context clues. Okay. Let's see. If you read a word you don't know, look for clues in nearby sentences. Sometimes authors will use an antonym or a word that means the opposite of an unknown word. The amount in Barb's savings account declined last year. To fix the problem, she plans to look for a new job and reduce her spending. She hopes these changes will increase her savings, which word means the opposite of decline, right? There it is. Moving on to the reading passages, we see again the active before, during, and after reading strategy being employed. And here the text is directing the students to think about what they want to learn from the passage. So let's set a purpose for reading, right? Start by looking at the title, the headings, the photos, skim the article. What are you going to be reading about? What do the photos and captions help you understand? What should you look for as you read based on the questions? Passage length and complexity continues to increase. In this lesson, during the reading, students are making connections to information in the text. So you can make connections between ideas in the text and between things you have seen or read about. Read the article. As you read, make connections to the ideas in the text, answer the questions in the margin. All right. And they're answering the questions in the margin to stay engaged. This lesson's second reading passage provides much needed practice with maps. Blow these up here. Packed with charts, diagrams, maps, and photos, visual literacy is stressed in Journey to Success, supporting College Career Readiness Standard Anchor 7 that reads, integrate and evaluate content presented in diverse media and formats, including visually and quantitatively, as well as in words. On to after you read. And here's another shift in complexity. In books 1 and 2, students work with a partner to show comprehension by answering questions together and then retelling the reading in their own words and discussing an idea from the reading. In the higher levels of Journey, 3 through 8, the students work independently, practicing close reading skills and citing evidence from the text to answer higher level questions. Right? What is an invasive species? How do invasive species get here? How did pythons and wild hogs get here? Again, a specific reading skill in this lesson, compare and contrast, is clearly explained. providing examples of typical words and phrases used to show similarities and differences. Followed by students returning to the text to practice the skill by answering questions. Right? What are the examples of valuable plants and animals? What are the valuable plants and animals contrasted with? What are the two main things that invasive species hurt? Right? Underline words that compare or contrast. Right? And so on. Close reading and prioritizing evidence, right? Detective work. Graphic organizers like this Venn diagram one, comparing and contrasting, are used in every lesson to help create a visual representation of the reading skill. And once again, complexity is turned up a notch in books 3 through 8 as text-dependent questions require the reader to return to the passage for the answers. Satisfying reading strand anchor 1, read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it. Cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. Close reading, prioritizing evidence. And they continue to practice fluency. Important to note that they do so only after having read and reread the passages several times. So now that they're reading for speed and accuracy, they should notice significant improvement. And that's motivating. Books 3 through 8 extend the learning even more with more word work. Every lesson zeroes in on using word parts, prefixes, suffixes, plural endings, compound words. Here, the root word, the word root, R-U-P-T, rupt, is defined. Students learn to use the word root to decipher new vocabulary words, hitting once again the target for the standard and touching on 2 of our 4 essential components of reading: alphabetics and vocabulary. And then there are 3 additional vocabulary review exercises to boot. Using vocabulary, vocabulary tips, word parts, vocabulary review. We're spending an awful lot of time on vocabulary, but let's remember that significant gains in reading proficiency can be linked to increasing text complexity. And uncommon vocabulary is one of the components of text complexity that gives students the most trouble. And it's called out in the college career readiness language strand, anchor 6. Acquire and use accurately a range of general academic and domain-specific words and phrases sufficient for reading, writing, speaking, and listening at the college and career readiness level. Demonstrate independence in gathering vocabulary, knowledge when encountering an unknown term important to comprehension or expression. As we wrap things up, writing tasks increase in complexity as well. Here, students write a report about an invasive species. Not my mother-in-law, for those of you who were reading my answers earlier. And here goes, write a report about an invasive species. You can use one of the species in the readings or one of your choice. Use facts and information from the articles and from your own research. So getting more and more difficult. Again, a graphic organizer and process writing are used. So we see here the draft, revising and editing, And they use new vocabulary and acquired knowledge from the texts to prepare for and participate effectively in a range of conversations and collaborations. Again, going back to anchor 1 from the speaking and listening strand in college career readiness standards, right? Think and discuss. What factors do you think contribute to invasive species making it to the US? What actions do you think governments and residents could take to reduce the impact they have? Talk about these questions in small groups. Okay, 2 more key concepts of EBRI, and we'll wrap this up for today. The first is teach the reader, not the reading. In other words, help students master reading strategies that build reading skill. For example, when the student learns the comprehension strategy of summarizing, she or he can transfer it to other situations and make meaning from a variety of texts. Journey to Success introduces important content across literature, social studies, science, workforce readiness, and life skills, right? But it tests students on reading strategies and skills, not content area subject matter. Teach the reader, not the reading. The second is instruction must be continuously monitored by teacher and learners to gauge its effectiveness. Every Journey to Success book has unit reviews and a level review for ongoing assessment and additional practice. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of today's Journey to Success. But hopefully it's the beginning of a new journey to success for your students. Journey to Success, it's built on the principles of evidence-based reading instruction, the essential components of reading as defined by WIOA and the STAR project. It's correlated to the CCR Standards, Table 11 and 12, and CASAS, and prepares adult learners for both academic testing and workforce and life skills.
Thank you, Greg. I've put some information in the chat for everyone who's joined to let them know where they can get more information.
Folks, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. I have so much to be thankful for. I'm sure if you're joining me today, you have as well. Have a blessed Thanksgiving, and be sure to contact if you have questions, requests about Journey to Success or any of our materials. Be sure to contact your state sales rep, or you can contact customer service. Again, thanks so much for your time today, and more than that, thanks so much for what you do in your community to help adult learners get ahead. That's it for today. So long and God bless.